This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And we are finally on the other side of a hellacious, fantastic, suspenseful, and joyful NBA season that culminated in the Denver Nuggets hoisting the trophy. And I don't know, while we're just, feeling the vibe, the energy and the vibes, I don't think anybody was as tilt as our man Mike Malone was at the parade celebration. Listen, I'm gonna roll out the red carpet first to my right hand man's www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man Mr. Warren Shaw. My brother, look, man, if there is anyone who could have been a Bullworth stunt double, it was our man, Coach Mike Malone. I mean, getting lit like there was nobody's business, but it was so well deserved. And sometimes I think we take for granted when NBA TV or whoever is out there that's televising the championship celebration, the parade celebrations, what these dudes do 24 hours prior to getting out there in the parade. It's like they on some Jamie Foxx blaming on the alcohol, like there's nobody's business, bro. It's awesome.
It is. I think honestly, in some ways, like I look at it as like truly the culmination of a job that's finally completed, as Jokic said. It's hard. It's really hard to win. And even teams that win, we don't always understand the things that are going on within that locker room, within that organization that you've overcome, in essence, to ultimately hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy. So I will excuse maybe a few transgressions, some slippages, of some comments and statements that maybe they wouldn't want to be held against them down the line. But at the end of the day, it was really exciting to see, Michael Malone as exuberant as he was, Aaron Gordon as loose as he was, KCP.
Oh, did you see when they interviewed him? He's like, Aaron, I don't know if you've taken a moment that, that now that you're an NBA champion, how does that hit you? He's like, I don't know about you. He's like, them Modelo's is what's hitting me right now. I was just like, I love that. The authenticity and just the natural feel is what you would expect. And I know we got a bunch of stuff we're going to get into, but I got to throw this out there because for everybody out there who really doesn't appreciate what you just said as it pertains to what players really should feel, let's remember this is the first NBA championship for the Denver Nuggets organization, a team that goes as far back to the ABA, right? So my whole thing is a guy like Nikola Jokic, who's very even-keeled and looked like he probably wouldn't have enjoyed anything that was pertaining to this celebration. For him to basically come out and be like, I know I said I don't like partying. He's like, but I effing want to stay on the parade. He's like, I want more parades. That to me just speaks to some people. It just hits them different. It hits them after they've had an opportunity to bask and soak into, whatever goes into that and stuff like that. Basically, the people in Denver is like, don't worry, Nikola, you come into the dark side. So you won't be able to appreciate that other side until you come over on this side. And so I'm just glad that he had his opportunity to naturally feel that, to go through that process. Because at the end of the day, he's still an NBA champion. He's still a two-time NBA MVP, and he's still among one of the greatest centers to play this game of basketball, even at the early stages of his career.
Yeah, well, again, we're very well said. So I'm excited. It produced a lot of NBA content, some meme-worthy stuff, even a little jab at LeBron, who's fired back at Coach Malone since the comments about retiring, et cetera, et cetera. But all in good fun. I don't think there's anything really to that, but I'm sure a guy like LeBron is going to make that bulletin board material. So look for LeBron to go for 50 each time he plays the Denver Nuggets next year. But either way,
I didn't even realize that Malone got a little sass in his succotash, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, my man has got like, I think he's been holding it all back, because if he didn't get this team to win this chip, a lot of this material would not be coming out at all.
Well, he was a little prickly all press conference.
I know because of the disrespect. So. But I
He's
feel like,
exactly that. They've been fighting for their seat at the table,
yeah.
and now they've earned it, and they're there, and he's going to let you know that they're there, and they plan to be there for a little while
I mean,
longer.
I
That's
can
what's
just
going to go.
imagine the Usos standing next to Mike Malone come season start, talk about we the ones.
Yes,
Anyway, man, we've got a great show on tap for our listeners. And for all those who are new on board with us, welcome. This is the Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw. We discuss the hot button topics of the NBA. Got a lot of news and notes to get into that's happening around in the association. Clearly, those whispers out there have now become white noise to those to the basketball ears. So we'll dig into that. We also have some important things that we want to take away from the NBA season in review. Highlight that in our segment of the breakdown. As always, be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at Game Face Lead, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. If you catch us on video platforms, we say hello. You can always catch us on YouTube. And if you see the blue and white logo, you know that we rocks with the 19 Media Group. So if you're down with the Baseline NBA podcast and you want another helpful handling of great shows to listen to, we encourage you to go to 19 Media Group. So go to www.19mediagroup.com to catch us and the plethora of great content that's out there. We have great personalities, great people putting on shows, and we cover the gamut. So go to www.19mediagroup.com. And as always, to catch this episode and all of our previous episodes, go to www.thebaselinenba.com. Shaw, let's get right into some of these news and notes that are happening in the association. First up, let's run through some of these trade rumors that have already been emanating in the NBA ethos. Bradley Beal, Zion Williamson, Chris Paul among the many amongst trade rumors. Now, earlier before, Shaw, when we were talking about Chris Paul, the rumor was that the Phoenix Suns were looking basically to release Chris Paul or waive Chris Paul, obviously making him available on the free market. The idea that Chris Paul may still be kind of bantered about in trade rumors, it clearly means that the Phoenix Suns are looking to go in a different direction, especially under new ownership, and is putting, James Jones in a bind. I just wonder from you, is it a healthy calling for Chris Paul, or is it more so to kind of validate, the fact that he is on the other side of his career? His health has clearly been an issue over the last few seasons. And rather than kind of putting this out there as like a look of embarrassment that he may actually be waived, they still want to hang that, kind of that dangling fruit out there about the idea of seeing if they can move him to get something in return.
Yeah, it's all about the perceived value. I think there's more than a handful. I'd say at least 20 teams that would love to get Chris Paul, but I think it's at what price and what does it cost you? So the fact that they put it out there, and I don't think it was misreported in any capacity. I think it was just that the Suns maybe wanted to walk things back after potentially indicating to Chris Paul that he might be waived outright. And then they're like, well, that's pretty stupid on our part. Let's see if there's trade value there before we ultimately do that. But Chris Paul, being a veteran guy, being, really a Hall of Famer, deserves a little bit of grace and a little bit of, respect when it comes to how he's going to be handled. And not to say that he's going to be able to pick his next destination, but I think just saying you're going to outrightly waive him without at least testing the market, I think was maybe a little bit interesting in terms of however that report got out there. Now, ironically, because the news has kind of caught up to us here a little bit, we have to talk about the most latest tweet from by the time we're recording here in Sham, saying that the Wizards have narrowed things down basically between Miami and Phoenix when it comes to Bradley Beal. And you would figure Bradley Beal, Chris Paul in terms of salary matching, or it's a DeAndre Ayton situation in terms of the Bradley Beal conversation. I don't know exactly what's going to happen there. I think that's a really interesting push for Phoenix potentially. But as it relates to Chris Paul specifically, trading him is the best scenario, I think, to me, as opposed to waiving him and stretching out his salary. If you can get anything back asset wise, picks players, and I really think it really needs to be players so you can increase the depth on this roster. That is, to me, the smartest move of all, if you possibly can make it happen. But with that initial report that you're going to waive them all together, I just don't know how many teams are going to be willing to give you even what is even like 25 cents on the dollar value, because it came out there that you want to move on from him altogether. So it's going to be a hard situation for Ishbia and James Jones to kind of navigate here moving forward.
I would have probably liked to have seen them maybe look to do some form of a buyout, but that's going to be hard pressed for them to be able to eat that much money. And I'm sure if that would at least ease the idea of Chris Paul being able to kind of dictate where he would like to go to, because I'm sure he would probably do it at a much lesser amount, that a team would offer for. And clearly it would be a team that needs him vitally to be an extra, an important piece for the championship puzzle. It's interesting, Shaw, because I'm sure we'll talk about the other side of the Bradley Beal situation in a moment. This idea that Bradley Beal goes to Phoenix, I don't quite understand the logic of that. I really don't know if whether or not that is viable. You're asking Booker and Beal to facilitate and one to primarily run as a point. I guess that's probably going to be on the side of Devin Booker. I can't see it because as far as I'm concerned, Devin Booker to me is a far better scorer than Bradley Beal, and he's more available. At the end of the day, if you still have, Durant under contract for the next year or two, that ball still goes through him. So I don't understand it. I don't know if this is primarily James Jones's call on this. I understand you got to kick the tires and see what's out there. But the idea that the end result is giving up a Chris Paul for a Bradley Beal, even on its face at this juncture, and this is nothing against Bradley Beal. I'm just saying, even on its face, I don't see where this makes the Phoenix Suns legitimate. I don't see it where it puts them over the Denver Nuggets. I don't even see it where it necessarily puts them over, a couple of other teams like the Clippers or maybe even, the Golden State Warriors if they retool, re-up. If all you're hoping for is that he's going to be the key piece to get them over the top, to me, you'd lean more on Kevin Durant before I'd lean on, any move of bringing Bradley Beal over to that team.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it could be Ayton who they're trying to do, and then maybe they keep Chris Paul. I mean, I think that's probably not what's going to happen after all the conversation. But I think I'm right there with you, as are a lot of even Phoenix folks, in terms of like you cannot be that top heavy, and you don't know just because of the shooting would be elite, but do those parts ultimately fit? And yes, Booker has played on ball as a distributor and as a guy who could look for his own shot when necessary. And would he be willing to do that again? And allowing Beal and Durant to really kind of take maybe more of the lion's share with Booker doing more play creation. But I agree, we've seen Booker as a flamethrower. We've seen that he is a guy who can be relied upon in the toughest of moments to score and to score efficiently. And I just, again, I'm not into the just throw fire at it, conversation. And just when it comes to the offense, and you need other guys who are going to want to play there. And I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a hold on. I think there's just a little bit of a over exaggeration of feeling like, hey, we're going to be able to get those veteran guys searching for a chip if we have these other three people here on the roster.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I would likely see James Harden in Phoenix before I see Bradley Beal. I just don't see it. Like it's just really
creation.
Yeah, I to me, the issue is having a reliable, viable play creator for Booker and Durant, so that they are not the ball is not constantly in their hands. Right? It's the same issue that the Boston Celtics are going through right now. And we can transition right over into Bradley Beal. The talk is that the Celtics and the Miami Heat were in conversations with the Wizards about getting Bradley Beal. All right, maybe Miami understood, I guess, in a way, because to me, Tyler Hero is a wild card. And if you have a reliable player like that next to Jimmy Buckets, cool. I think the health factor still plays. I think that you're rolling the dice by saying you're going to bring him, and that's going to help put that team over the top. But it still doesn't address the fact that they don't have a legitimate point guard. So it's just kind of funny to me that the Miami Heat want to play that game, unless that's like, and I'm not saying that's the only move that they wouldn't make. But if you're the Boston Celtics, like what possible advantage by having Bradley Beal on your roster that you would, you might as well just keep Smart and Brogdon. Like, I don't even understand the logic of that. Like, I understand if you were going to be in conversations with Chris Paul. I just don't understand why the Celtics think that they would be in conversations with Beal unless they don't have the confidence they're going to be able to keep Jaylen Brown. And they're trying to supplement something next to Jason Tatum to at least give them the feel that they still have two top tier players on that roster, and they can that can give them room to do more.
Yeah, I don't. There's not much credence to the Beal to Boston situation. That's just because of the Tatum Beal relationship, St. Louis guys, et cetera, et cetera. They've said that they wanted to play together, but it's just not a realistic scenario fiscally or really even in terms of how the roster is currently constructed. So I don't give that conversation much credence. Miami seems to be very real because of where they're at. It would allow Bam to regress into a tertiary guy and now have to be the secondary scorer. They've proved, as you alluded to, that they don't need Tyler Hero in essence to make a deep run. And Beal is a top level scorer. So while health and availability are very, very much in question, I think with the addition of Beal for wherever he ultimately goes, Miami makes a lot more sense for where they're at right now, and then taking some pressure off of Jimmy Butler, who was just forced to do too much, I think, offensively at time, with Bam Adebayo also forcing himself to be more aggressive, and it just doesn't seem to be his natural, mode of operation.
I'm sure he'll find his fountain of youth when he makes it to Miami. How about that?
Well,
they always seem to find, what I'm saying? Oh, that extra kick. Oh, look at me. I can play 70 games now. Like, how about that? You find out you playing in Miami instead of playing in DC. All right, Shaw. Zion Williamson has been rumored to be in some possible trade talks. I don't know how much of this is really based on Zion Williamson's inability to stay healthy, or more so about Zion Williamson's quote unquote off the court immaturity issues. If that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, other shows and people who are more plugged in than us have said really it is the combination of the two. It's not, if it was just one or the other, we're probably not at this stage. But when you take the fact that he just can't stay on the floor, his alleged dedication to professionalism on and off the court to be able to stay on the court and to stay healthy, eating habits, et cetera, and his choice of lifestyle, if you will. And his choice of lifestyle is not indigenous to him. I mean, there's plenty of players out there enjoying,
he literally embraces being a man-child.
But at the end of the day, it's the combination of those things where it make it really, really tough. And again, I've heard and listened to various things, and it's like, damn, David Griffin, do you want to be the guy that trades Zion Williamson, who could be an MVP generational type talent? But then there's a flip side conversation is, will he be that with you? And that's just what general managers always have to kind of play with. It's like, listen, he may be all of these things, but in this specific environment, he's not going to be that for us. So do you cut bait now and move forward? And I wouldn't want to be in that position. I don't envy, David Griffin in any capacity here now too. But I think you would see a collective sigh of relief from Willie Green, CJ McCollum, and even Brandon Ingram to a lesser degree of like, all right, it's our team now with whatever their return ultimately is. I think the team itself would be happy for it. But if you're Griffin, that's a hard pill to swallow. And I know there's more than enough suitors who feel like, hey, you know what, our situation, our culture, our team, our front office would be able to get this guy right. And again, either way, you're taking chances out there too. But the biggest rumor you heard, I'm sure, is to Portland, for the number 3 pick. And I just don't know if Portland's going to make that big of a swing. But there are plenty of teams out there interested in Zion Williamson.
Yeah, so I think the caveat to this, Shaw, and I'm not going to belabor the point because you brought up excellent points. The caveat to this is, when will organizations learn? If you didn't already learn this from what happened with Ben Simmons, do we have to wait for Zion Williamson for the hint to be perfectly made clear? There are some generational talents, Shaw, that are great at putting the ball in the basket, or being a great marketing tool, or putting fans in seats. It does not mean that they are the cornerstone, or they are the type of team you build around in your franchise. You look at someone like Nikola Jokic, and you look at like Zion Williamson, and you look at the way that those guys go about putting in the work, right? You can look at Zion Williamson physique-wise and say, oh, he still looks like he's built. He's a tank. But look at what both of these players have done to evolve as far as basketball play go. And yes, you can make the argument that if, Zion Williamson was on the court would that 27, 7, and 5 or 4, whatever that he puts up, as far as numbers go, have the same kind of impact that you see from what you get from a Nikola Jokic? And it's nowhere near it. They're in two totally different stratospheres. But that's because Nikola Jokic is in a system, is in a culture, and is part of a culture, and is building a culture that reflects what he feels is the most important things for him that the game of basketball is giving him, right? You just don't see that with Zion Williamson. And I don't know how many more years you got to continue to go through that before you recognize if you're going to choose to keep Zion Williamson, no problem. Just don't try to make him the face of your franchise. Stop putting him in situations and the organization in situations that facilitates the idea that he should be the cornerstone of your franchise. You want to make someone the cornerstone of the Pelicans franchise? Put it on CJ McCollum. He's always wanted to be the man, and I'm sure he has no problem with doing that. He's already doing that for 500 plus players that represent the NBA right now. That's what I'm saying. I just think that sometimes the priorities are misplaced when it comes to us looking at the numbers, or we're looking at the excitement of an athlete. We're looking at this right now with Ja Morant. Just because Ja Morant is an exciting player doesn't mean that he can hold down or be the cornerstone of a franchise. He's shown that he is not ready to take on that mantle, and nor should anyone assume that he's going to be ready to do that anytime soon. So what's going to happen if we continue to keep pushing at this? We're going to get a Ben Simmons situation. And I'm just hoping that the Pelicans, who have been lambasted with this for years now, losing quality players, losing opportunities and chances for them to maintain a level of success, that they put it all on one player. They push their chips all in the table, and then they wind up losing everything. And it takes them decades, literally, almost what it feels like, before they can get themselves back on their feet and reestablish credibility in the NBA ethos.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I had no intel here. I think Zion ultimately gets moved, but I don't think it's to Portland. I think the Pelicans are going to cut bait here, and there'll be some mystery team that cobbles something together, some ungodly amount of picks potentially, that takes a chance and, make Griffin an offer that he can't ultimately refuse. But I just don't know that it's going to work there. And while when on the court, he's been pretty special, he just hasn't been on the court enough. And I think when you take the off the court stuff into account as well, it just makes it a very, very hard sell for your franchise, your organization, and the core players of that roster who are there coming in every day trying to win basketball games.
All right, y'all, let's do a little good move, bad move. Okay, here with the baseline. Mike Dunleavy, he is now being named the general manager of the Golden State Warriors. Mike Dunleavy Jr. I don't want to get that mistaken with Mike Dunleavy Sr., albeit, though, you think Mike Dunleavy Sr. is still around in the game of basketball. Good move, bad move for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. He's been there learning the organization along the way. If you can't have Bob Myers, then get somebody who's still there and kind of understands the Warriors way. So I think it's a pretty solid move for Golden State, and we'll see what the fruits of that are going to bear here in the next couple months.
All right. Michael Jordan is finally selling the majority shares of his ownership to the Charlotte Hornets. Good move, bad move.
That's a business move, shrewd move.
Let me handle my business, man.
Yeah, he sells it for what is it, like $2 billion after buying it for like $275 million. So
I think it's around $3 billion.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, my math is way
off.
So
that extra B makes a difference. You know what I'm saying? On that,
you don't need it. He absolutely don't need it. But at the end of the day, hey, awesome for him. I think in that regard, and I think for the franchise and organization, it is maybe time for just a new day there, and a breath of fresh air. And MJ as the owner hasn't been, I think as polished as everybody would have expected. I think a lot of people would have expected for where he was as a player, and that would hopefully translate over into his governorship, with the team. And it just didn't. They've had a couple nice runs, but never got anything substantive underneath his leadership, if you will, there too. So hopefully the new group can invigorate some life there, and we'll see some changes within that Charlotte organization.
The only downside to it, Shaw, it's one less person of Black ownership or Black majority-ship in sports. That's just to me the only downside. But I agree with you. I think if you're Michael Jordan, clearly you want to show people and show that Black people can make moves and can make money in the very sport that they help build. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, while it's another Michael Jordan story, it still shows that as a businessman, he's making an intelligent business decision. There's nothing wrong with that because now he can move on into other ventures. I just hope that it will allow him flexibility and it will allow others to show that he deserves another seat at the table. If it's not in basketball, if it's whatever else that he wants to venture himself into, he's got more than enough money to play with to do so. Mm-hmm. All right. Coaching carousel, Shaw. We'll do a little coaching carousel. Good moves, bad moves. Detroit Pistons scooping up Monty Williams. Good move, bad move.
Good move, but it was expensive. They gave that guy like a 9-year deal or something absurd. He's the highest paid coach in the NBA. Shit is crazy. But shout outs to Monty Williams, man, and going to Detroit where he'll ultimately, hopefully, get to build his team there, man.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, we're all about the full Monty, right? Nick Nurse to Philly. Good move, bad move.
I don't love it. I don't love it. So I don't want to say it's a bad move because
you don't love it because he's still in our division. Is that what?
I don't know. I just don't love it. I'm concerned about the pairing with he and Joel Embiid, and they got a lot of conversation to figure out with James Harden still here as we record. So that one is to be determined.
All right, Frank Vogel to the Phoenix Suns.
Bad move. I don't like it. But I just don't like it. But
hey, the next time I have you list this out properly, it's like 2 bad moves in a row, man. I thought we'd have a little good and a bad, a little good and a bad. Yeah. We're not waffling here, Shaw. Adrian Griffin to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Hey, I like it. AG has been searching for that job for a little while here now. Ultimately gets to take the head seat. Didn't necessarily see it coming here for Milwaukee, but again, a guy who's played in the league. I think he'll get the respect of the players there. Has a no-nonsense kind of mentality from what I can understand, even as years as an assistant. Has done a really great job, so I'm excited for him. I think it's a good move.
All right, and then for Toronto, moving off of Nick Nurse and then now moving on to Darko Rajaković.
Yeah, I have no idea. So, no disrespect
as unknown and as mysterious as whether or not I said his last name correctly. I know.
Yeah, well, I'm not ordinarily I try to correct you, but I don't know. You could be right here. So
well, listen, it was it's better than me saying Masai Ujiri. Okay, like so I can evolve. I can improve.
Everybody, we all can. So Darko here, we'll see what ends up happening. Again, unfortunately, I don't know that much about him. At this stage of my NBA, exuberance, but I'm sure we will get our first taste here coming up into the summer, and obviously going into next season as well too. But if Masai feels good, then hey, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that this was the right hire, despite all the names that are out there and even all the other assistants that have moved around as well too. They go with somebody who hasn't had a head coaching experience before to take on this young Toronto team.
Yeah, and look, I think it's good all around. We get to see some new faces. This is probably a good opportunity for new faces to kind of get in and operate, and not just on young teams, but also with veteran teams as well too. So kudos to Adrian Griffin, kudos to Darko. They have an opportunity on 2 different ends of the spectrum to see if whether or not they can elevate both their teams and the organizations and put them back, into a not credible sense, so to speak, but reestablish the credibility of what these teams have had with their previous coaches under the helm, for us to really look at them on a competitive scale, if they can maintain this. So to me, I think it's good all around, and it brings up a lot more intrigue. And I think it settles a lot of the talk down, Shaw, about all of the movements that have taken place with veteran head coaches being ousted so quickly at the end of this regular season. All right, Shaw. So before we move on to our breakdown, which I'm sure we were kind of digging a little bit into, we'll do a little bit of the NBA season in review. For our listeners, are you ready to step up your style game without compromising the planet? Well, introducing an exciting new partnership between Blue View Footwear and the 19 Media Group Network. Check out Blue View. Go to bit.ly BlueView19 so you can see the ultimate collaboration of fashion, sustainability, and media excellence. Blue View Footwear is renowned for introducing the world's first fully biodegradable and durable sneaker to lead a revolution in cleaner materials and manufacturing. So be sure to go to Blue View. All right, check out the Blue View website to be able to look out at some really, really unique, awesome brand of footwear. It's the sneaker with timeless style and an ocean of comfort that can take you anywhere and leave only the footprints. They have a sleek and contemporary styles that cater to a wide range of tastes. Blue View has fully revolutionized the footwear industry by replacing petroleum plastics with plant-based plastics. Their innovative plant-based sneakers are constructed of 100% biodegradable materials, and their eco-conscious materials don't sacrifice durability for environmental responsibility. Blue View Footwear believes that fashion and sustainability can coexist harmoniously. Step into the future of fashion and sustainability. Explore their incredible collection of eco-friendly footwear by visiting bit.ly/blueview19. That's our affiliate link through the 19 Media Group Network. Don't miss out on this amazing collaboration that's revolutionizing the way we think about fashion and sustainability. Get ready to elevate your style with Blue View footwear. And if you let us know you've made a purchase, we will shout you out on the next show. Again, go to Blueview19 today and start your sustainable style journey. We got a whole lot more here on The Baseline.
Time to break it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Callie Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And on our subject of the breakdown, the NBA season in review. Hell of a year, Shaw. I know that we talked a little bit about, the Denver Nuggets winning the chip earlier during our show. But what other things really stand out to you about this NBA season in it, in its totality?
There are a couple of things, honestly. The season was a long one, full of, as you alluded to before, intrigue, full of drama, and it always is. But it seems like this year was probably rooted even more so. We saw the outright ridiculous, in terms of the Embiid versus Jokic conversation when it even turned racial. I think at one point, in the media space. Obviously, the Lakers turnaround from
shout outs to Kendrick Perkins on that.
No shout outs there. But the Lakers turnaround, from the Russell Westbrook situation as well too. Say that again.
You prefer I yell at him? I'm not shouting him out to be like, yo, big ups. It'd be like, yo, pipe down.
Yeah, more like that. And I think the controversy that started the season with Draymond's punch on Jordan Poole and Coach Udoka, and his situation in Boston having to be released or relieved of duties there too. That's how the season started. You know what I mean? That's how the season started, with those two extremely controversial things happening with the two teams that were in the NBA Finals summer before.
Predicted to repeat, to come back here and compete for the NBA championship again.
Yeah. So to see the season start that way, is really, really rough, and really indicative of the chaos that we were ultimately going to endure throughout the course of the season. Neither the Warriors or Celtics got back to the NBA Finals for various reasons, and both of those incidents were cited as potential derailing points for both of those teams, independently. So I'll kind of leave it with some of those things that surprised me the most, and kind of like throw it back at you. What were some of your most exciting or more shocking moments that you can remember from this 2023 NBA season?
I think the most shocking moments for me, and it's actually a continuation of, is the Ja Morant situation. So now the NBA has basically come down on Ja Morant. He's now been suspended 25 games without pay for this when we start this 2023-24 NBA season. But part of this really just stems from, what has transpired when he was first disciplined during a critical stretch when the Memphis Grizzlies had an opportunity to really take ownership, so to speak, and establish themselves, legitimize themselves. I think it really opened up a wound that was never really tended to or looked at, which is the maturity of this basketball team. And I know we can sit here and point fingers and all this other kind of stuff, but I want people to understand, because I think it leads a little bit back to what we were just talking about with Zion Williamson. Ja Morant to me is no different. And, Shaw, we've had iterations during our generations where there have been gaps. We so badly want certain players to take over the mantle, to fill in the chair, so to speak, when the greats of that we were watching, start to either fade away or walk away from the game. We want those guys in them seats, and we want them in there now, or we want them so quickly because we want to see, one lasting rivalry, while they're out there on the basketball court. Sometimes it's just not worth it if the players are just not mature or mentally ready to handle that. And ownerships and cultures and organizations and communities are impacted, when silly things like this occur, because a lot of people just focus so much more on the money, but what they're not focusing on is the mental well-being of some of these players and how they're handling this. And so I just want to highlight this because, again, Ja Morant is an all-world talent. Ja Morant, will probably be, a great player. But if you're talking about Ja Morant being the cornerstone of a franchise, if you're talking about Ja Morant uplifting an organization, You got to stop with this, because he's a highlight reel, that suddenly is indicative of that. You got to stop with just looking at the numbers on paper and all of the analytics. You got to look at what this guy is doing on and off the basketball court that reflects that type and warrants that kind of adulation. Because I'm telling you right now, when things go wrong, when things are unsurfaced, it goes in a bad way. And you see like how the Celtics have to endure that of what they thought they had in Ime Udoka. You know what I'm saying? Like just things like that, man. We have to stop, looking at things on the surface when it comes to some of these athletes and when it comes to some of these people that we're holding in this high regard simply because we're passing them a bag.
Very well said. And the John Morant conversation is something that is going to ring on well into, even as you alluded to, into next season. I was surprised, I think, at the length in terms of the shortness of it, honestly. From the way things were being leaked out to some degree, I thought it was going to be a little bit heavier. Of course, the Players Association is in uprage and an uproar and feel like it's too severe. And for whatever information was,
this would just be one of those situations in which the NBPA, I really wish that this was a situation that they would not mouth off and chirp and give the fines to. I understand that you got to protect the players, but if you really want to protect the players, be real with the players. Be real with them and don't say anything and speak to them directly about why they hurt their opportunities and chances. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is the worst opportunity, because what you're telling fans and listeners is that you're going to fight a situation that should not even be fought because the player put himself in that situation. And listen, let's be real about this. Part of this suspension is because he lied to the commissioner. Lying to someone who is affording you an opportunity to play in this game, to play in this league, says something about whether or not you have credibility and standing, and that they're going to continue to put you out there if you're going to continue to do stupid things like this. And it's exactly what it is. It's stupid. Let's keep it 100 on that.
Yeah, well, the PA, they have to. I guess that's the company line. They're going to fight. It could have been a 2-game suspension. They would have probably issued a statement that was fighting it. Again, I was just a little surprised. So I think in some ways, maybe Ja got off light. But hopefully in this time, especially with all the summer and all the months leading up into next season, he can really, really assess where he ultimately needs to be and wants to be one of the guys that can. I don't know if he can still, like you said before, I don't know if he can still put on him like he can lead the NBA into the future, so to speak. But whatever it looks like for the rest of his career, he's obviously losing a lot of money as a result of this too. And you or I don't necessarily care about that. I think we care more about the human being and, how he's going to mature as an individual, because I guess in some ways he still has enough money to last him a lifetime if he does things the right way, even losing what I think Brian Windhorst says. He think he'll lose $50 million as a result of this suspension and endorsements.
And I guess that to me is what I find comical. It's like everybody shoots right to the money part of this. And I'm like,
it's not as important.
Missing the point here. There is so much. Shaw, he's in a city right now, and I don't want to make this about politics, but let's be realistic about this. He's in a city, right, where the Black population, right, is continually being undermined and ostracized. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at what's going on in the Tennessee, the Tennessee House, okay, with 2 representatives of a city that he plays NBA basketball to. And so what I'm just saying is that these things compound each other. And so this is where we have to be careful about what messages we're sending out there about what the prioritization is when we look at Black athletes that are doing things like, to me, it smacks where other people are continuing to write the narrative when we need to be writing the narrative accordingly. And the NBPA had an opportunity to do that. And rather than speaking to this on a macro scale, so to speak, they only looked at it specifically to the fact that he got suspended. And that to me is disingenuous when we're talking about what we're asking of not just Ja Morant, but we're also asking of us and what we're expecting of Ja Morant. And that's all. I don't want to get on belabor. We got other things that I know we want to cover, Shaw, but it just burns me every time that we do this, because it's exactly the go-to move in order to obfuscate what is totally in front of our face here about the well-being of an athlete who clearly does not get it. He does not understand the ramifications of the ill decisions that he's been making, not just the last couple weeks, couple months. It literally is probably going all the way back to his college days. And it's been excused and it's been overlooked and it's been coddled. We can't afford that any longer. Not in this day and age.
All right, well, I'm going to transition us away from the jaw conversation. There's more to come for that, for sure. And let's talk about Sacramento and Miami. So I want to ask you, the more surprising season / run, Sacramento kind of throughout the course of the regular season and ultimately capturing the 3 seed in the Western Conference and losing to the defending champions at the time, the Golden State Warriors, in 7 games, or Miami near the brink of complete elimination when it comes to the playoffs altogether to ultimately get out of the second play-in game all the way to the NBA Finals. 2 very different types of runs, one obviously in a shorter time, but again, brink of elimination for Miami, really and truly. Sacramento versus Miami, man. What do you think was a more exciting story overall?
Kangs. I mean, Miami's done this before. Miami always underachieves in the regular season. You give them a window to get in. You give them a window to get in, and they will be the toughest out that you will see. Even when they'll get swept, right? Like you expect them to just get pummeled and beaten. You know, they're a continuation story. You know what I mean? You remember those books we used to read when we were growing up, where they had like choose a path. You get to the bottom of the page. You know, technically you picked the wrong one because you just want to see it end, but you knew if you went back to that page, you're going to select the right one. That's the Miami Heat, man. There just never seems to be an end to what we expect to be as the demise of this organization. So I am more surprised about the Sacramento Kings because even when we look at the talent that the Kings accumulated, there was still a question about whether or not Mike Brown can get these guys to play better, right? There's still a question. There's always a question about the Sacramento Kings because it's hard to buy into the legitimacy of them being a good team. This is the first year in a very long time, Shaw. We look at this team and we're like, damn, everything that these guys did, even if you said that they overachieved in a positive way. They overachieved in such a positive way that it's hard not to feel good about what their chances are going to be going into next year. You know what I'm saying? Many people are probably giving the predictions that the Kings will still probably be better than the Golden State Warriors. And while the Warriors will obviously be a tough out in any circumstance or situation, it's all about have these guys embrace that what they did is real and can they replicate that next season? And I like that when you're talking about the Sacramento Kings.
I would have to hardcore agree with you there. You know, to some degree, Miami's run, while unprecedented in a lot of ways, only the second 8 seed to make it all the way to the NBA Finals. I think in this playoff environment, they were ripe and they were built for it. And, you know, all the things that make Miami, I think just kind of came to fruition to some degree. Sacramento being the 3 seed and having one of the better offenses in the game that we haven't seen in a while. And as you alluded to, Mike Brown being able to captivate that team and making Fox and Sabonis all-stars, although Sabonis had been an all-star previously. That to me, I think is probably the more surprising story and one of the better stories, you know, of the NBA season, especially in the Western Conference. I'll give you one more Western Conference story and then kind of give it back to you, you know, for anything else you wanted to add. But the Utah Jazz and Lauri Markkanen specifically, I think were another just amazing, great story that came out of this NBA season. You know, the finisher, if you will. I know he's serving his military time, you know, in his homeland here now, buzz cut and all. But for Lauri Markkanen to be, you know, a 25-point per game guy and just kind of really off of what his last couple of seasons, and obviously he had a good season in Cleveland as well too, but from going from Chicago to Cleveland, you know, really was just kind of an extended big man out there for them, and then being the focal point of Utah's offense when a lot of people thought that would have been Colin Sexton or even Jordan Clarkson to a lesser degree. He led that Utah team behind with Will Hardy and even obviously Walker Kessler as well. To me, the Utah Jazz were an exciting story. They're not going to sneak up on anybody next year, and obviously they didn't make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be right there competing and going to be a hard out for a lot of teams.
I totally agree with you. But I kind of, you know, he was never your young son. I wanted him to be my young son. And I don't know if it was just the situations in Chicago that just didn't allow him to flourish. But If this is going to be the version of Lauri Markkanen moving forward, I'm all on board. I want to see him, thrive, because I just think he has a really, really good game. Yeah, I think part of it is, our expectations about what a good game translate at times. I think we make way too many comparisons of saying, I got to compare him to the next international based player. I got to compare him, to some guy in his position. I'm just saying for the good of what he brings to the table, because that to me exudes the uniqueness of him as a player and where that fits in. Can he find a space where his style of play, the way that he plays his game of basketball, can make him a threat on a night in, night out basis, and be able to do it with consistency and be respected amongst his peers out there in the NBA. And to see him be able to bounce back after the things that he's kind of gone through with the multiple teams and, being, sidelined and compromised. I like to see, that they believe, at least the Utah Jazz does, they believe that he is a player that they can help build with and around. And I think as long as he continues to believe that and comes in with that mindset, I think that he's going to be a legit 25. And who knows, could probably even be better with the way that the Utah Jazz play. Shaw, there are two things that I want to bring up in keeping the West Coast related is what happens when teams push their chips into the table. What comes of it? Either you have your poker face or you don't. So what we're talking about here is Rob Pelinka pushing his chips in the table and totally revamping that Lakers team, relying on LeBron James and the timing of him coming back healthy, Anthony Davis and the timing of him coming back healthy, and basically putting a whole new roster around them to figure things out, to give the Lakers an opportunity to make it to the Western Conference Finals. And then looking at the KD Kyrie movements, in which Kyrie gets sent over to Dallas, a team who made it to the Western Conference Finals the previous season. And that trade completely submarined anything that the Dallas Mavericks could possibly hope for or deal with as far as making any kind of play or run to get to the playoffs. Who's got egg on their face? Or is this the expectations of what happens when you're gambling, trying to weigh on keeping your premier player, keeping them happy at the expense of possibly, tanking your team to doing so?
Yeah, I'll start with the Lakers stuff really quickly. I mean, we touched on it already for me, but they were the laughing stock for a lot of people who obviously don't like the purple and gold, and it didn't look promising for them. And while they did get swept in the Western Conference Finals, they were in the Western Conference Finals from being the 13th seed for a good majority part of the season. And to see those moves they made and to kind of continuously kind of inch up and creep up. And then you started to get the feeling like, oh shit, that's not the team you want to probably see come to playoffs. And they ran through the Grizzlies and they ran through the Golden State Warriors ultimately. So kudos to that organization. Kudos to Pelinka for what he was able to do. And again, he has a lot of work to do going into this offseason, as we alluded to already. The Kyrie KD thing is interesting because Brooklyn in general is kind of on my list. So it's interesting that both of those guys went to the West. Varying results for Phoenix, and then obviously didn't go well for Dallas at all. But I think left in the wake of it are the Brooklyn franchise, right? And not kind of like what happens there. While they were able to get Bridges over there and Cameron Johnson and guys like that to now kind of bolster what they hope is going to be a more promising future, but it's going to take some time. They also have to deal with whatever is the corpse of Ben Simmons as well. And to me, just that whole situation in Brooklyn, man. That is one of those more disappointing tales of again, a folklore, if you will, of, hey, this is cautionary. Just you have to, it's not just about the talent, but it's the mix of talent and personalities that have to make your team or your organization go and steer in the right direction. And Kyrie and KD together did not do it. And now they're both separately on different teams in the Western Conference. And again, Ben Simmons is wherever he is, and if he'll even finish next season in Brooklyn, that would be somewhat of a miracle. James Harden came and left. James Harden may come and go again from another team and organization. Just anything about that Brooklyn situation to me it sets tentacles and ripples effect across the NBA by how that all went so sour.
Yeah, but I think the other thing as well too, Shaw, is I think we can dispense with all of this nonsense about Kevin Durant is the key to winning a championship. Kyrie Irving is the key to winning a championship. James Harden is the key to winning a championship, right? I mean, I wasn't even going to mention Ben Simmons either. All of these guys, they need something to bolster what they bring to the table if you're talking about trying to win a championship. They do not want to be the ones that are front running to take you to a championship. They need somebody there to help put all of that other stuff in place for them to go out there and do their thing and shine. And guess what, man? There ain't nothing wrong with that. If you've got an organization, you got a head coach, you got a team of people that could figure out a way to put together a roster that can allow players like these guys who are going to make ginormous amounts of money to be able to do what they do best, and it helps translate to wins, making deep playoff runs, possibly winning a championship, then you're the better for it. I think you probably would put those organizations and teams on a pedestal because they figured it out. They figured out the formula. Sure, this is the Da Vinci Code of basketball right here. How do you get these type of guys to elevate themselves so that we buy into the idea that they are the LeBron Jameses of the NBA, right? Or the Kobe Bryants of the NBA, because those are those little intangibles we always sift and search and find. And at the end of the day, when we finish looking at their numbers, they walk away from the game, we'll always say, this is what always puts those debates out there about whether or not they're among the greatest who have ever played the game, or whether or not they've accomplished more than what they've shown us and things of that nature. It's all of these things. So again, all they've done is draw a line in the sand, so to speak, about what our understanding is of these players. And I would hope that if you already got a veteran guy and he's got everything established, he's got that culture in place, everything is good. You want to bring in a Kevin Durant, you want to bring in a Merck, you bring in any of those guys. But you're talking about trying to build a championship. You talk about trying to win a chip, and you're saying you're going to do it by putting these guys out there and you don't have the other things in place. Good luck with that.
Well, I think the NBA's learned. I think you put it extremely eloquently. They are not the foundation of what you're trying to do. They are the mercenaries. They are the add-ons, if you will. High level, even Hall of Fame talent here we're talking about. But they are not the leaders of a championship culture, unfortunately. And again, they're still very, very good. So that Brooklyn whole situation is one of the more wild and disappointing stories to think of this NBA season for me. Last one for me, for the most part, I'll say this again, and I can't stop heaping praise on the Oklahoma City Thunder. I said in the beginning of the year, I was like, listen, or last summer, not even beginning of the year, last summer after they got Chet Holmgren, I was like, the time for tanking is over. Like you gotta push this forward. Then Chet broke himself in the summer, and I was like, oh well, maybe the time for tanking isn't over or isn't as done as I thought it was. And turns out they were still like, no, we're ready to soar. So the fact this OKC team almost made it into the playoffs, SGA had an all NBA type season, really, really elevated himself, I think, as an NBA into the upper echelon of the NBA conversation. And they get Chet to come back. Jalen Williams turns out to be, he's a real player. Giddey continues to develop. I'm really excited about this Thunder team and the fact that they were able to take a step forward in a way that I didn't see coming with Holmgren going out to begin the year. I just didn't see it. I thought they were going to definitely regress back to their old ways. And they really were close to getting to the playoffs, man. So shout to OKC, brother.
Hey, OKC, if there's some players out there, if you need a mercenary. you guys have finally entered the chat. So, you got a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? You got a little bit to spend there, man. You know what I mean? Not just money, got some collateral there to work with, but I know you, Shaw, you'd be like, hell no, leave them. you want them doing this the Blue View way, baby. Organic. Okay. I want this natural. You know what I'm saying? I want natural domination. There ain't nothing wrong with that, man.
One last thing though, and I know I said that before, but hopefully, the career of Lonzo Ball, gets back on track. He missed the entirety of the season. LaMelo also missed a lot of time as well. So I think anybody who suffered injuries, we won't talk about the Kawhi situation. There's still a lot of negative energy, I think, around certain players, certain things too. But all these guys ultimately want to play. So I think, that's also part of the story of the 22-23 season as well too, where the amount of injuries and devastating injuries some guys ultimately had to go through. So, hopefully everybody can come back healthy and strong. And for the 23-24 campaign, we're wishing everybody, Godspeed when it comes to their recovery.
Yeah, well said, man. I'm hoping that we get all of our star players back on the basketball court, playing an abundance of games that can allow us to appreciate, what they had been able to give us prior to these injuries that they've sustained over the last few seasons. And obviously it ups the ante and it ups the competitive level of all of these other teams when they're fully staffed and they're fully healthy. So completely agree with you, Shaw, altogether. Awesome show, man. So much stuff that we covered, and we did it in a pretty damn good amount of time, albeit I'm sure there was still a whole lot more to talk about. You know me, man. I once I start getting in my bag about some of these topics, bro, we can do this all night long if we really, really want to. But we want to save our listeners' ears, man. You know what I'm saying? We know that, they got a whole week of other stuff going on. So,
Yeah, well, as you allude to, as you drop that nugget there, that obviously the NBA draft coming up, so
right around the corner.
Yeah, we'll be back up on it, discussing what's happened with the NBA draft. There's a lot of rumors. Does Bradley Beal and or Zion Williamson get moved on trade day as a result for other teams trying to make some other plays and moves to bolster their rosters? A lot can happen here with the time we see you next week, and then the way we finish this one off here, man. So can't wait. Can't wait to be back in the saddle with you, my guy, and we'll see how it goes, man. NBA draft, it's going to be wild. The Wembanyama sweepstakes have come to a close.
Let the games begin. Once again, man, we'd like to thank you and yours for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. We'll catch up with you next time.